It's been more than a month since the U.S. started administering coronavirus vaccines, and of course, we've learned a lot about the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines in that time. So CBS 4 medical editor Dr. Dave Nida is here now. And Dr. Dave, what kind of side effects are we seeing from these vaccines?
Well, to this point, we've given out about 63 million vaccines. In the first month, there was 14 million administered, and it is actually from that first month, that first 14 million, we actually had a solid number on side effects in terms of what wound up happening to people after receiving the vaccine. And as it turns out of that 14 million, there were about 640 what were considered to be serious side effects, things like allergic reactions, hives, wheezing, so on and so forth. So actually, even though that number may seem high when you hear 600, when you put it in the perspective of 14 million, that actually is at the same rate of things we see when people get a flu vaccine. So from a safety standpoint and side effect standpoint, it actually is better than we really thought it was going to be when it was first distributed. Now, in terms of side effects, the things that people most commonly wind up getting, besides a sore arm, which is the vast majority of people, they include things like headache, also fatigue and dizziness. Those are the top three. And then there are others who do wind up getting things like fevers, chills, aches, and so forth, but those tend to be more in fewer people than the majority of people.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard fatigue has been a big one for a lot of people that I know who've been lucky to get the vaccine. So this is a big question. I know we've kind of talked about this in the past, but we still hear this question a lot. If you've already had coronavirus, do you really need to get both shots of the vaccine?
Yeah, it really is. It's a good question. At this point, the advice remains the same. It's going to be you get two vaccinations if you've already had COVID. We just don't know how strong, we don't know how long your immune response is to that. But on the other hand, there's been some pretty intriguing science out within the last 10 days on this. There have been 4 studies and 4 papers that have been done that have just taken a look at the immune response to getting a vaccine after you've been infected with COVID. And as it turns out, that just simply one single vaccine dose winds up increasing the antibodies in your body against COVID over 1,000-fold. And not only is the antibody response large, it actually is a very strong and robust response in terms of being able to fight off the things such as the mutated strains or variants that we're concerned about. So this is almost like you're getting a Terminator type of antibody response here, which is really good. So, you know, we know that the vaccine is safe. Now we're seeing, boy, it really seems like it's effective, even if you've already had COVID once before. Now, the reason why this is important is, you know, we're really worried about, do we have enough vaccine doses to give out? At this point in time, it's still too early to say you're going to see a big change in the recommendations for people in terms of whether or not they only need one vaccine. At this point, the recommendation remains 2, and that's the way it probably will be over the next several months.
Great, very interesting. I know people are feeling hopeful seeing that coronavirus cases in Colorado and really across the country are starting to drop. Is this cause to celebrate yet?
Yeah, I don't think anybody at the CDC is, putting on party hats or blowing up balloons yet. I mean, it is good. We are coming out of our 3rd wave of this virus, and the news certainly is good. But yet there's still a lot of concern and hesitancy at this point in time. It really is true that the numbers have dropped pretty dramatically. And so people are going, what's going on? Why are we having such a decrease in numbers? And there are several things that you need to take into account. You know, first and foremost, we are starting to vaccinate people, and that is certainly very helpful. And I think that'll even decrease the numbers more as time goes on and we vaccinate more people. The second thing has to do with behaviors. People's behaviors are just really consistently becoming or staying good. We're not having as many get-togethers. There's no holiday travel. recently that we're having to take into account here. I think people are getting used to things such as masking and social distancing. It is really the norm these days. There's a third thing that is coming into play, and it's something called seasonality. And you're going, what does seasonality mean? We know that viruses tend to react to things like temperature, humidity, even the amount of sunlight during the course of a day. And we're thinking that COVID actually may have some sort of response seasonality-wise. It may actually begin to decrease as we head toward the spring. So we'll see if that continues to be the case. The other thing has to do with testing. Now, Colorado, we test very, very well. But in many other states, testing very hard to come by. It's like getting a lottery ticket. So with the number of tests going down, we're not picking up as many cases of COVID as we otherwise might. So you see kind of an artificial decrease in the number of cases. And last but not least, when you take a look at the number of people who have already been infected, there's just not a lot of people that the virus is going to wind up going ahead and reinfect at this point in time. I mean, we know we've had at least 30 million Americans diagnosed with COVID so far to this point, but we actually think the number of cases is probably triple that because not everybody gets tested. So I think overall, the news is very, very good. We know that the vaccine is effective. We know that the vaccine is safe. We are seeing behaviors and other factors come into this. It's not time to let our guard down. We're still concerned about variants and mutants, but I think if we just stay the course, we are going to see some definitely brighter days ahead. Very optimistic about how things are looking.
That's great to hear. We're all in it together, so we'll keep it going and hopefully we'll continue to see those cases drop. Thanks so much for joining us today, Dr. Dave, and we'll talk to you again next Monday at 11 a.m. to get more coronavirus and vaccine questions answered. We'll be right back.